and I'd like to welcome Matilda Gubansky, again, the director of Galerie Diane de Polignac. Thank you for being here, Matilda.
Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you for organizing this talk. Well, you asked me to introduce Fariba and Ramuntcho, so they can each talk about Gordon and Matta. So as Fariba will talk first, I'll start with her. Fariba Bogzaran, who is an artist, a scientist. She founded the first Dream Study graduate certificate program at John F. Kennedy University, where she taught for over 20 years. Fariba met Gordon Onslow Ford in 1989, leading to a collaboration exploring art, consciousness, and they founded together the Lucid Art Foundation in 1998 to explore the inner worlds and deep consciousness through visual art. And the dialogue basically continued until Gordon's passing in 2003. And today, the Lucid Art Foundation is very much active, developing programs, including exhibitions, seminars, artist residency, and publications. And then Ramuntcho will be speaking. Ramuntcho Matta, who is a multidisciplinary artist, working with sound, with drawing, with videos and words. He produced numerous albums, notably through his label Sometime Studio. In 2008, Ramuntcho founded the Lisière Center, which is a kind of an artist residency for reflection experimentation, which led to now what it's called as the linear methods, which is recognized by the scientific community for supporting people with mental disorders, working through art. And Ramuntcho is, of course, the son of the artist Roberto Matta, but he also views himself as the sum of his friendships, often citing figures like John Cage and Brian Gazing, for instance. In 2011, Ramuntcho directed the documentary Inti Matta about his father, Roberto Matta. And since 2014, Ramuntcho has maintained a daily ritual or daily practice of creating one drawings and one poem each day, which are then shared on social media. So if you want to give him a little follow on Instagram or Facebook, each morning you will be welcome with a drawing and a poem. And so here at the gallery, we have been working with Ramuntcho since 2018. We already did 2 exhibitions together about Roberto Matta, as well as 2 publications. And friendships is always the theme, friendship is always at the core of everything we do with Ramuntcho. And this exhibition, Gordon Onslow Ford and Roberto Matta, it's the same. Friendship is at the core of this exhibition, and that's Ramuntcho's initiative, and that's how he introduced our gallery to Fariba and to the Lucid Art Foundation, and that's how we decided to do this exhibition and the publication that comes with it. And now I would like to take this opportunity to really thank them both. Thank you so much for your trust during this whole process. I'm so happy that we're finally here with the works here and the gallery and this fantastic book that we did together. And thank you so much for your trust. And now Fariba and Ramuntcho organized this conversation to share their insights on the connection between Gordon Onslow Ford and Roberto Matta. And they're going to talk about their vision of timeless and relevant new art movement, basically. So Fariba, I think it's your time to present.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you everybody for participating. And it's really a wonderful pleasure to do this with Ramuntcho, who's been a friend of mine for over 30 years. And it's more than friendship. We call each other twins. We have a very deep connection, including our birthdays is the same day. But we have a lot of parallel, we keep finding all sorts of parallel interest all throughout the years. We decided that today would be more personal as well. Ironically, both of us are not art historians. We came into this from a different angle. I came to this to meet Gordon through my research in lucid dreaming. And by default, I became sort of his expert, but that's how I came in, not from a place of an art historian. Today, I thought what we're doing is I will do a little presentation showing you some slides, and then Ramuntcho will talk, and then we will have a conversation. For the 100-year anniversary of Surrealism, there has been a few wonderful exhibitions, starting with Pompidou on a major Surrealist exhibition, and then there were many other ones, and then recently in Philadelphia. If you happen to go to Philadelphia, I highly recommend it. It was curated by Matthew Afron. It's an incredible show. So for the 100-year anniversary, I was thinking, what can our foundation do? Now, there was a notebook of Matta in Gordon's archive, and so I decided I want to reproduce that in the occasion of the 100-year anniversary, and made it sort of look like as if it's a notebook. It's a limited edition, 100 copies for a 100-year anniversary. So I'm going to share with you now. Let's see. So this is how the notebook looked like. Gordon gave this notebook to Matta when Matta was visiting him in 1956. It's a Japanese accordion book. And what Matta did was he made drawings in there and gave it back to him. But it's not just any drawing. He actually told the story of their meeting and their life. Initially, when you look at it and how Matta can be very whimsical with his drawings, you would think that it was just like almost like a comic book. But when I started writing the introduction to this book, it was so touching that sometimes actually it would make me cry. I would just stop and it was very heartfelt, because this story is not only their story, but people go through this quite frequently. When a war happens, when people fall apart, and sometimes they never see each other, but this is their story that happened. And so I thought that for some of you, you might know Roberto Matta and Gordon Onslow Ford deeply. Some people don't. Some people know some. So I thought that to do a little overture through this particular book. Okay. All right. So then I'm just going to. The first time they met was in Paris in 1937, and it was chance encounter in some ways, because they were renting rooms in a home, and the landladies, they knew each other. So the way Gordon told me the story is that they were having lunch, and one of them said, well, I have an artist living with me. And he said, well, I have an artist. Well, why don't we make a gathering so they can meet? So they created this gathering. So this is one of the first drawing that he made for that book, that they met. Gordon was a painter. He was a landscape painter. But when he came to Paris, he was hoping that he would move from landscape to something more. So their friendship started in 1937. They met in cafes, and then they decided to take this summer in Trévignon, where their favorite painter, Yves Tanguy, his ancestors were from Brittany. So they both went there, spent the summer. But that summer was very, very important, because it really changed their life, because they read Ouspensky's Tertium Oregano. And this book, fascinating. When I met Gordon the first time, I was doing a lot of research on lucid dreaming, the science of lucid dreaming. I was working in this sleep laboratory, and so I was really engaged with him around consciousness. And he got up and went to his library, and he brought me this book. And he says, this book transformed my life. And he gave it to me as a gift. It was from 1938, that he put it in 1938, where he and Matta read this book. When I was working on Gordon's book, I reread the book. I wanted to find what passages that set them on fire. And these are the passages, and some of them I wanted to say. Ouspensky says science does not sense it or does not recognize it. Now we have a form of knowledge which senses this difference perfectly, knows and understands it. Now it's very interesting, he actually italicized form of knowledge. And that is what in our field we call it epistemology, the ways of knowing. So basically he was just saying there's other ways of knowing besides science, and art can do it. And he says, I'm speaking of art, the musicians, the painter, the sculptor, well understand that it is possible to walk differently and even impossible not to walk differently. But he really gave them a very strong impetus to get inside of art as a way of inquiry, art as a way of knowing. When I met Gordon, he was 78 years old. He died he was 90. So with 13 years, we were very, very close friends and collaborators. But he never stopped with that inquiry. And this, when I met Matta, I was in 1993. The same with Matta. Both of them were very similar in their inquiry. So Gordon had to transform from his landscape, and this is what one of the paintings we found in our archive that he was doing in Treviño. That was different than what he was doing before. And in 1938, we have one of Matta's automatic drawing in our archive, and he was doing something similar to this at the time. So in this book, Matta is the red hat and Gordon is the green hat. And he shows that in Treviño, they were painting and they were showing each other their paintings. And I was looking into our archive to see what would they be doing around that time or after that. The work would be similar to this, what Matta was doing and what Gordon was doing. And Matta once told me, he said, in order for Gordon to become a surrealist, he had to give up his trees because Gordon was a landscape painter. And it's interesting that both of them, they did this drawings at the same time, 3 trees moving along, and then Matta made the forest. And Gordon told me that Matta made these 2 figurines afterward. It was sort of an afterthought, and it's about their journey that he created there. Recently, I had to go back into reading something about the Querico, and Gordon gave a lecture in New York, and he said, this is the most, about this painting, about the Querico, he says, this is the most happy canvas of the Querico that I know. It must have been one of the first works after his arrival in Paris, 1911. The impact with the wonderful atmosphere of that city, the dramatic life, the street and careless atmosphere, and this is in his lecture. And then what Gordon did is this painting, which is now in the gallery. It's called Street Scene Paris. It was the happiest time of Gordon Onslow Ford, was that period of time before the war happened. It was meeting Matta, it was exploring new ideas, it's becoming part of the surrealist group. The other thing that the both of them were very affected by was mathematical objects. What is part of it visible and part of it is invisible. And so they both were exploring this concept of visible and invisible throughout their whole life. Again, I met them both after Gordon was 78, Matta was just turned 80 when I met them, but their dialogue was just like as if they were 25 years old. Chateau Chamillioux is I brought it in because it's important. 6 months before the war broke out, Gordon, through Gertrude Stein, who knew about this chateau, he rented this chateau, and with Matta, they went and looked at it, they liked it, and they decided they're going to invite other friends, surrealist friends. So for more than a summer, we found that it was 6 months, where they stayed there and they paint, and each one of them had a room, and he has a whole story about, they invited André Breton, his wife Jacqueline Lamba, who was a great painter, Esteban Frances, who's a Spanish painter, and Yves Tanguy and Kay Sage. Even though Tanguy and Casey didn't actually stay there too long. They went on a hotel and stayed there, but they were with them all the time. This was a very important time for them. It's very interesting. This is when we were talking about artist residencies. I got one of the first artist residency, or not the first one, but it was the surrealist artist residency. Ironically, that after Gordon died, I developed the artist residency in Inverness, and Ramuntcho started an artist residency. Recently, I just traveled there. The first time I went there was raining. I couldn't even see the environment, and it was all surrounded by mountain. And this is just a recent one I took photo. And here they are, Gordon Matta, Esteban Frances, and Ethel Cahoon, and Matta's first wife. And they used to go and visit Factor Chabal, which is an incredible place close by. Oh, it's not so close by, it's about an hour away, of this postman who, for 33 years, gathered stones and created this incredible monument in his backyard. But it was very surreal. So they would go and visit, and they were very enamored by it. This is our artist residency, which this summer when I went to Chamilio, when I was sitting there and watching the whole place, I thought Gordon found something similar to that place to live. And now this is the studio that we created to an artist residency. This was my studio for 17 years. It was Gordon's studio for many years. So there is another photo from that period. Now there's a story that Gordon often told me about the key to Chamilio, that he presented it to Breton with a red cushion. Now, by then, Matta and Gordon wanted to tell Breton about their vision of a new art movement. And that is something that it never really came in total fruition because of the war. This is just a little interior of how that chateau was and how they were working. And that the chateau they kept it just like the way it was at that time. And now recently it's sold, and they're going to all change it. So, and it's very interesting that we have a few paintings of Gordon. He's done some work with Birth of Venus, and there's a statue there. This is the living room. They would get together, and Breton would tell stories and read poetries in the evening. And that is a rendition of Matta, of Chamilio. The person with the guitar is Esteban Frances, red hat and green hat, and Yves Tanguy and Breton. This was Breton's room. It's kept just the way it is. I could not believe it, but that's how it is. They kept it. Here they are in Chamilio, and then the rest of the group. That's where they were dining. So we found so many paintings Gordon did in 38 and 39 about mountains. He was so impacted by that time. The painting, A Man on a Green Island, and I chose this painting and I put it in the cover of the book I was working on, Gordon and A Man on a Green Island, because when you study his overture, everything is in this painting that he developed later. This was done before the war broke out and he left. And this is a painting that Matta did, Inscape. And Gordon used to have this, and he parted with it a while ago. Well, the war broke out, and this is a wonderful rendition of Matta, but it's very painful. Gordon had to go back to England, and he had to fight the war. He was called back to Navy. Some of the stories that you don't, it was told to me either by Gordon or Matta. I wrote it in the book for the gallery. I don't know if I told that story, but it's the part that really touched me deeply was how they were so deeply connected, the two of them, and like brothers. They were so connected. When Gordon received some inheritance, not from a family member. Everybody thinks that this man, Uncle Dick, was a family member. It was not. His name was Richard Abdi. He was a patron, and he left him some funds. And when Gordon was leaving, he wanted to give Matta some money, but Matta would not accept it. And Matta told me this story. that after Gordon left, one day in his jacket, he finds a whole roll of money that Gordon left for him. And with that money, he was able to escape and go to New York and get an apartment and live there for a while for that money that Gordon left. In return, Matta helped Gordon to leave the Navy and come to New York. It's like they saved each other's lives. Gordon made this painting when he left. Crime Meets Crimes relates to the war and breaking up. And here his Matta says they were separated by half a world. When Gordon was in England, he did this issue of London Bulletin, and he made this painting, Sapleptomania. It's a very long story about what he says about this, but it really brings in everything that he had learned to this painting, and then later on he developed it. Here is Matta sitting, waiting for Gordon. Matta and Kay Sage helped Gordon to go to New York to give these lectures at the New School for Social Research. He gave a series of 4 lectures there about surrealism and introducing surrealism to New York. But it's just, I don't know how the experience was for him to sit there and wait for Gordon, but it must have been very emotional that he would remember, it would be a central image for him for have it in this book. So then the New School for Social Research, he made these, the first part of the surrealism, and the last one, he says, Adventures in Surrealist Painting during the last 4 years. They both were very interested in creating a new art movement. And they talked to Pierre Mabille, but Pierre Mabille talked them out of it, and they said, well, go and join the Surrealists. And eventually Gordon resigned from Surrealism, and Matta was not part of Surrealism. They were still continuing their exploration of consciousness through art, what they were interested to do from the beginning. Here's the lectures Gordon is giving, and he's talking about Yves Tanguy's painting. And these are a couple of the paintings that I put from what Gordon did in New York. He couldn't, and what Matta did at the same time. Gordon couldn't stay in New York. Often people say, well, how come Gordon didn't get so famous? Well, he was not in that picture, the very important picture that was taken, because his visa ran out, and Matta would not let him go back to England. He really made him stop from going back, because if he had gone back, he would have died. So he ended up joining his friends in Mexico. But those people in Mexico, those artists in Mexico, it's just been the past 10 years that they're coming into view. But those people who stayed in New York, they became more well-known. Here is Gordon, and he meets his a wonderful writer, Jacqueline Johnson, and they get married, and they go to Mexico. And here's Matta. When I was writing about this, I first wrote about, well, they're going to Mexico. But then I noticed that his red hat is in the back of the car. So he's gone with them. So it's right there. It was very beautiful. And here's Jacqueline. There's a scholar came to the foundation, and they're going to write about Jacqueline and her writing. She's a brilliant writer. This painting right now is at the Philadelphia Museum of Art of the Surrealism. And this was a time that Gordon started to part with the kind of work he was doing with surrealism and moved. He got this huge place that was abandoned. It was a mill. And they refurbished many of the rooms for the surrealists friends or other friends to come and stay there. So it became sort of during the war, this is what happened, that he just hosted some of them, like Romedius Faro would stay there for a month. And Matta visited him. And then his work slowly shifted to connect with the land. And here now, Matta is in New York, Gordon is in Mexico. Their work is starting to be different, but yet at the same time, the dialogue continues. And there's a visit of Matta in Mexico for Gordon. I thought that's so beautiful, the way he did it. It's so emotional in these. If you had known Matta was much more expressive and emotional. Gordon threw his emotion inside of himself. He was very poised. But the way Matta would do these drawings about their connection, and of course he changes Gordon's hat to a sort of a Mexican hat. It was very beautiful. This painting is in the show right now. He made this painting just before, after he left Mexico, but he started a couple of versions of it when he was leaving. He just did not know what his future is in California. He called it Future of the Falcon. And this was the kind of a painting Matta was doing around the same time. And 1950, he came to San Francisco and he was exposed to the redwoods, and he started putting that in his paintings. And then the group Dynaton happened with Wolfgang Paulin, his surrealist painting friend, and Limolecan, American painter, and then Lucida Hurtado, who's just recently been recognized quite a bit, and Jacqueline Johnson, who wrote the incredible essay for that Dynaton. And what that Dynaton group was, art for us has no business to preach nor teach, but to complement the quantitative understanding of science by cosmology in terms of quality. But we will not become prisoners of any concept, not even our own. Now, this is a group in California, but Matta is doing very similar in where he was when he went back to Paris. I just wanted to show you some of the Dynaton group, and then Gordon was introduced to meditation at the time, and later he said, drawing is meditation, painting is meditation, meditation is meditation. When people ask, do you meditate? He says, I paint. And this is a kind of work that Matta was doing around the same time as Gordon was learning meditation in that era. Gordon studied with Horotobasi Roshi. I'm a little bit Gordon-centered because I know more about Gordon's work. And then he was very influenced by the Asian calligraphy. Then he started to work with line, circle, and dot. And this painting is right now in the show. It's called Near Woods, Near Sky. So here we are in a boat that was falling apart, and that's a good one. It shows that is falling apart, and they were going to basically make it to scrap. And Gordon bought it with a Greek painter, Jean Varda, and they transformed it into 2 studios. But Varda lived there. Gordon didn't live there, but he had it for his studio. And the interesting thing is that then Matta came and visited, and Gordon created part of his studio for Matta. Matta stayed for months. We think it's 6 months that he stayed there. So here is the studio, and when you look at the studio we have in Inverness, it follows the same line as this studio in Sausalito in the boat. In fact, the studio in Inverness, he called it the Ark. Here is Matta in Gordon's studio part of the time. I thought that to show you a few works that he did many paintings, but one of them, it was homage to Gordon that Matta did for Gordon. And this is, Matta always liked to play with words. And instead of saying all at once, he said all at once. And Ramuntcho does the same thing. And I like this one. It says, this is not a painting. There in the book, he talks about the reunion in California. He shows in one what he was painting and what Gordon was painting, and how they have changed. But they were very similar to what they were doing. After Matta left, Gordon bought a property in Inverness, and he started living there and worked there. He made this period of his work between 1960 and 1962, these black and white painting. This is also in the show. It was Zen itself. You cannot really talk too much about it. He really was totally inside of the study of Zen and created this. And then I don't know why this one was there. So the big painting he made, I'm so sorry for the blurriness of this image because we don't actually have this painting and we did not have a good image of it. It's called, he made a painting in 1962 and called it Man is a Space. Now, wait a minute. That is what happens. So Matta did this painting. He called it Earth is a Man, 1942. And then respond to that many decades later, Gordon says man is a space. So even though they're not together, they're in dialogue with each other. He's still, for him, whenever I would meet with Gordon, having tea, he often used we. We are doing this, we are, and I said, who is the we? He says, Matta and I. So even though they were not living together, they were not necessarily, but he's still in his head. They were just doing things along with each other. These are some of the questions. These are existential questions he was asking that, we ask, who am I? Is there self that exists before I was born, now resides in me and will continue to exist after I die? Art is a way of exploring the unknown, a way of discovering the self and the world. He wrote that in 1964, which is very similar to what Matta was doing. I just wanted to show you his world in 1995. I like this image of Matta going from known to the unknown, and one of the writings of Gordon, I'm slowly disappearing as a person and assuming the body of my painting. It illustrates it really well. At the end of the book, and Matta says they both picked the earth. So they must have had this dialogue around the earth and consciousness, and so he took their hat off and focused on the earth. And Matta's later work focuses a lot on the earth. He does his globes, and at the very end, he says you cannot tell whether it's down on the one that thinks into or dawn on the one that thinks into. But that is what he does. He takes their hat off and unite them together at the end of this book. The first they were together in a dual sense, and then at the end they became this non-dual connection between the two of them. So their story is, this is just a very short rendition or short talk about what happens, but between the two of them. I would like to now give the floor to Ramuntcho.
Thank you very much, Fariba, for your wonderful transmission. Now what? That was the question. Because we have to contextualize a little bit the story. We are just after Matta came back from Spain, where he was during the Civil War. And the Civil War was really an experience because it was really like the end of the world. Because the Surrealist group was born in reaction of the First World War, saying that never again. It was supposed to be a movement to wake up the concept of consciousness, the concept of earth, the concept of what we are here for. Because the idea was, we come from there, and we did a lot of time before we arrived there. And being there the idea of evolution, it's war. This is not possible. This is not possible that still now the concept of economic, it's war. So I was looking for the origin of the idea of the surrealist movement, of the idea of a togetherness that allow us to not escape, but to transform the idea of reality to be something more than what we see. So looking for some research, I discovered that one of the first drama that inspired a literary movement was La Commune. And at La Commune, there was a resistance group called the Hydropaths. And for the first time, people thought that the only key to get to a superior level is poetry. It's not rationality. Rationality, it's almost an enemy. And the idea that life is something that is really, really difficult. It came for what I call a very interesting state of mind, which is depression or illness. Illness, it's a moment when everything is falling apart. It's like a war. It's like a war with your body. It's like a war with what you thought could be life. And I have several periods in my life where I didn't feel any utility. And at one moment, I was in a big crisis, and my father gave me this notebook. This notebook is 1943. When he was in New York, that's what he told me. When he was in New York, there was no doubt that it was the end of humanity. Because for him, the Nazis have won the war. And what do you do when you see that it's the end, that there's no future? What do you do? And with Gordon, they spoke a lot about the idea, because when they met in 1937 and 38, it was obvious that Hitler will be the king of the world, because he was the only one organized to go back to the past and refuse the idea of evolution, saying that they don't want it to non-European people to be part of the world. They want a kind of a domination of the white Aryan intelligence and refuse the idea of others. So what do you do in that period? You go to Uspansky. And Uspansky went in the search of the history of the universe and the history of different culture that are important. And it was not about studying different tradition. It was about feeling different sensibility that will not go by the information of the rational text, but of the dynamic of what the eyes can see, which is not something that you can understand. It's something that more like feelings. And it's interesting because in the famous notebook, one of the important image, it's an image of Marcel Duchamp, who's dealing with a kind of reality that it's transformed by concepts very different. You have Albert Einstein, which was at the time a new definition of reality. And of course, you have the notebook with a lot of, I have to find the pages, a dynamic representation of the dynamic of relationship between what you are and what you feel. And the idea, it's very clear that a photography expresses something, but the drawing will take you to another kind of dimension. And I was reading this book when I totally lost interest in what life could be, you know? And going through these kind of spaces, you discover that that reality, it's more powerful than the usual representation that we have. And from the discussion I have with my father, I mean, I don't know if it was my father when I discussed with that. Maybe the discussion I have with an old man with a new knowledge. It's that the idea of friendship is not something easy, and it has to be kind of uncomfortable, because the friendship, especially with Gordon, was about putting the finger in a very uncomfortable thought. And what I understand of what they were saying, so I'm not saying is that it is whatever they were saying, but for what I understand, is that we have to fight the idea of understanding too. We have to find a way to look for insecurity and to go away from control and the usual way of representation, even in relationship. And Gordon was really strict. I mean, what I understand, again, is not what I'm saying what he was, but what I felt about what he was. It was the idea that he was standing on Zen. So he put his reference on that, and Matta was more standing on Leonardo da Vinci, which is almost the same thing because it was the opposite. Leonardo da Vinci, when I was 12 years old, Matta gave me the notebook on Leonardo da Vinci. Who can give notebook of Leonardo da Vinci to a 12-year-old boy or person? And I was reading, and most of Leonardo da Vinci notebook is total bullshit. His theory about the density of the shadow. And it's interesting because he's building really rational theories about something totally false, which means it's a good training for imagination. And the discussion, and I saw what, 40, 50 dinners or meeting with Gordon and Matta or visit in the studio, and they will speak about that specific work, and they never agree on anything. And I think it's a very good dynamic not to agree, because you can see that everybody's right. Nobody wins, and everybody wins, because nobody loses. Because the idea was not to say, you're right, I'm wrong. It was say, you're right, but I'm right too, even if it's something very different. And I think that was of the, I don't like the word utility, but I like the, I don't know how to express it. I was discussing with my mother. Well, my mother was really friend to Jacqueline. Her name was Jacqueline. And I think for both of them, it was not easy for Jacqueline to have Gordon and for my mother to have Matta. Mm-hmm. So they were saying, it's not ideal. It's not ideal, but you never get bored. And that's very important too. To be always of that level of, how do you say exigence in English? I don't know the word exigence. It's not a necessity. It's more than a necessity. It's you have no way of not being. You have to live every second as if you are a growing flower. A growing flower cannot relax. It has to fight all the time to grow. And we say, oh, what a beautiful flower. But my father was always saying, what you say is beautiful. It's saying it's a big dollar of transformation and metamorphosis. So the idea to show this kind of energy, I asked my mother, what is a painting? What is a piece of art? And my mother said, it's not another world. It's part of this world, but mostly is a presence. It's an energy. And what Gordon and Matta were trying to do, it's try to giving us a path to be in touch with that energy, to allow us to be more than just a naked body. And to also knowing that we are not from there to here. We are both of that. And we are a dancing energy between the past, the present. It's a dance between the past to create an unpredictable future. And the idea now that Fariba and I share, it's how can we transmit that in a very strange period that we are entering in, which is the digital world, which means a world without a body, a world without even the concept of the body will disappear, and the concept of responsibility. I work a lot in schools with kids and with young person, and it's very interesting that for them, all this world of it's useless, because all will become artificial intelligence, which is easy, which is no conflict, which is no discussion. It's always very interesting because it's very new and very flattering. But is the interesting important? And maybe what Matta and Gordon are trying to work with from the surrealist movement. And of course, they want to do a movement, but very early. they discovered that if you do a movement, it will become fashionable. So it will be part of industry and it will disappear. And Gordon was always saying, not show your work, because the painting you're doing in your studio is in the universe. It doesn't need to be seen. It's there. If you do a little drawing on a piece of paper, if I do something here, and I use, of course, the technique of my father and the technique of some others, but really Gordon thought it doesn't have to be seen. So that's really a paradox for me, because it's like a song is not supposed to be heard. It's like, and for them, for Gordon, I felt that was really important. And the other thing I'd like to, well, it's the same concept. Very often when Gordon came to Paris and he spent time with my mother and myself, sometimes I was really sad because my mother was saying something I was not agreed to, etc. And he told me, you know, your mother, she's always right, even if she's wrong. And for me, it's like it's an important thing to not to be clivant. How you say clivant? An idea of somebody that you don't agree is not something negative. It's something really positive. And now we have these two persons, Gordon and Matta, and both of them, they participate of doing Fariba and Ramuntcho, which is the same question of what is it today to be Emily, Mathilde, Gary, Christian? What should we do with that? You know, should we do something like a puppet and just doing something that everybody does? Or are we here to not uniquely interact with the world, but interfere? What would Gordon will do today? What will Matta will do today? Because we are in a state of war. We are in a state, or we can see very concrete way that the world, humanity is fighting against himself, against itself, it's in English. So how to handle this? And it's a responsibility that we all have now, is to speak about what would be the tools that we have today to create something as important as what Gordon did and Matta did. Because there is no Gordon without Matta, and there is no Matta without Gordon. And there is no André Breton without Gordon. Because they spent some time together. And knowing Gordon, I'm sure that he would modify the way Breton would perceive things. Even if we have the idea of Breton as something very rigid, etc., he was not like that. And today, very often it happened to me. I'm speaking with people, and at one moment people say, well, we have to stop the discussion. And they say, what? Why? And they say, well, because I'm sure we will not agree. So my feeling is that the exhibition we did with Fariba and Mathilde about friendship is the most important thing. Because when I look at the world of the hydropath, it was not something to touch the public. it was something to really densify friendship. When I do a drawing, I know that Fariba will look at it. When I do a little drawing, I know that the heart of Fariba, because she will, of Fariba, of Mathilde, will be maybe shocked, maybe nicely, etc. But I'm working for friendship. It's the only way I live. And I was looking, you know, I was looking for the root of the word love. When it started, that people called themselves, oh, my love. And it's very new. It's like 600 years old. Before that, people will call it sincere friendship. And Gordon and Matta show us that during all their life, I mean, it's amazing. They knew that even alone in the studio, in which part of the world, the eye of the other will have kind of a synchronicity about, and you have to keep working because you have to give the energy to the other one. And if one of us stops the fight, we lose the war. And we know that the war has nothing to do with guns. If you want to fight an army with guns, you will lose. But if you fight with poetry, they will never win. And for me, that's one of the reasons to continue. And those two guys that met, some people say by chance, but I would say more, as Breton say, hasard objectif, for this necessity to force us to go further in the search of the important. Voila, I think I have said almost nothing, which is a good way to start a discussion.
Well, fabulous. No, so many things comes to my mind when you were talking, Ramuntcho, about stories that kept coming to me. Like, for instance, when your father came and visit Gordon the last time, it was in 1997. He came to Gordon's studio, and Gordon was doing this very formal work. And he sat and looked, and he said, I want a piece of paper. And it was as if he was going to give Gordon an art lesson in automatism. So we gave him a paper. He threw water there. He threw paint there. He just made a mess out of everything. He got up and walked on it. And he made Gordon so mad that Gordon did not keep that piece of art. What you were saying about the disagreement, they would come with disagreement sometimes. I would watch them would go at it when it.
Yeah, but it's a wonderful thing, disagreement.
Yes, I mean that it brought its tension that they. Then he was getting more motivated. It's almost it was his motivation. But he always was checking what Matta was doing. I don't know what Matta was doing, but anyhow, when we finished the book Once Upon a Time in December of 1999, I was coming to Paris. He gave me a copy. You have to take this to Matta. It's like he was living with Matta, even though he was not, and they were apart. But you were talking about this friendship. When a friendship is so deep, it doesn't matter if you're next to each other, if you haven't seen each other for years and years. I'm sure many of you all relate to that. And then you see that friend that you have connected in such a deep way. It's just you start from where you are. It's also the synchronicities you mentioned. It's interesting that they were born 1 year apart and they died 1 year apart. I mean, there's a lot of, we can call it coincidences, synchronicity, whatever that is, but they were entangled in some invisible ways. They were entangled. And another thing that you mentioned about the time, I cannot tell you how much a kind of an eerie feeling I got when I went to Chamillioux. I was just sitting there, just closing my eyes and just imagining them there in 1939, in summer of 1939, just before the war broke out. And I was just thinking about where we are today, this kind of chaotic world that we live in. It's almost like the parallel between the two is uncanny. And what they did with it. And I did ask Gordon many times about how did he handle it. He said you just create. That is what you were saying about poetry and how to win the war. So it's just continue creating. It's like what you're doing every day. You create and you post what you've done today, what you wrote today. It's just that is what it is. It's like when it's just the creation, because otherwise you get into this kind of a closeted, fearful, I don't know where, but
Well, but you have to accept that. I'm looking for some Gordon painting. You have to accept that tension. It's really useful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have to accept that we are in a wonderful moment in history. And we have to thank Trump to show us that ignorance is still here. And we have to thank all this materialist computer world to show us where the enemy is. The concept of acculturation, how you say acculturation, non-culture,
Mm-hmm.
is getting so strong with art without consistent, with music without music, with meat without meat, with milk without milk. I mean, everything is without. And it's a wonderful new because it means it gives space to things to come back again.
Mm-hmm.
So of course we are in the same state of panic of what's happening in 1939, but they didn't stop to work. At the opposite, they went to Chamillioux. They went to the Chamillioux to work for the next 80 years after. Now they work for us, and all the people that kept be frontal with the enemy, they all died. So the importance of the essence, it's poetry. We are still reading Greek poetry from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And so what's the way to keep the flame? It's the curiosity of a friend for another friend. What are you doing tonight? And in the morning, you send an image or a poem or something to your friends. And then you say, wow, it's still alive, it's still fighting. Most of the people on the internet are looking for image of violence or whatever. Very few of us post, well, I did this little drawing yesterday. I wrote that poem. And we have to be at that level. It doesn't mean when the enemy gonna come in the room, you're not gonna fight with a gun. But it means at least you see that there is not only one reality. And what my mother was saying about art, it was not something different. It was something part. It was not alternative of reality. It was complémentaire.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a presence.
Mm-hmm.
And the presence of the work of Gordon is the same presence of the word of Arthur Rimbaud or John Coltrane or Ravi Shankar. They are friends. I mean, when you listen to Ravi Shankar, you feel your friend, it's just here inside you. And this is the energy, I think, that Gordon gave to everybody and to the planet, to say, keep the friendship alive even with somebody you didn't know. Maybe